Hey, this is Greg Berger, and you are listening to the Geekcast Radio Network.
Hello and welcome to episode 247 of the Cinema Geeks. I am one of your Cinema Geeks Optimus Solo, and joining me as usual is the Comic Concierge. Hello, Dan.
Hello, how are you?
Good, good. I feel like I want to be one of those radio guys that's like from back in the day, like it's like soothing and just like grab a cup of coffee and sit back and I don't know.
Enjoy the soft underbelly tones or whatever. It's been a while since I've listened to the radio. Obviously.
Me too, obviously, since that probably hasn't happened in decades. But we are back talking more Western films with you guys. So we've been covering a whole slew of different Western films. And last time we talked about McCabe and Mrs. Miller. And today we're here talking about Johnny Guitar from, what year was this? 1954. Yes. Yeah. So before we get the facts about Johnny Guitar, just remind everybody, Dan, what your experience was or thoughts were going into it. Was it something you knew something about? Was it completely blind? And kind of set the stage for you as you kind of went to view this time.
I knew very little about this going into it, and I kind of try to keep it that way as much as possible. The only thing I knew about it, because as we were doing research, I knew it was, the general tagline was, it was a feminist Western, in which I was interested to see what that meant, especially for a movie, as we mentioned, that came out in 1954. But that's really all I knew about it. Never watched it before. Never saw a trailer. I don't think I've ever even seen scenes from this before, now that I've watched it. But how about you? What was your experience with this?
There's a bunch of movies that we're covering on this retrospective that were blind spots for me, but many of them I have obviously heard or knew they existed or knew lines from or certain things about it. Like there's a lot of famous Westerns that we're covering. This is one of those that falls in the category of like the least I knew about. I don't know if there was a single thing I knew about this film other than what I saw on I think I may have seen the poster and saw that, there was going to be a strong female presence in the film. But outside of that, I knew absolutely nothing about this. So it was very interesting kind of going into this, coming off of McCabe and Mrs. Miller, also not knowing anything about our next film, which we'll get into towards the end. So I was very curious how this whole section was going to play out. ChatGPT was very skeptical on if I was going to like this one or not. So I was curious if it would keep its streak of being somewhat correct or if I would buck the trend for that one, but definitely going in very blind. So so I'm interested to get into our thoughts, but before we do that, let's let Dan set the stage with all the facts about Johnny Guitar, and then after that, we'll get into our feelings after we finally watched it for the first time. So take it away, Dan.
His name is Guitar, Johnny Guitar. As this week we continue our Western retrospective with a look at Johnny Guitar from 1954. Set in the American West, the film centers on Vienna, played by Joan Crawford, a fiercely independent saloon owner who was waiting for a new railroad to arrive, believing it's going to make her a fortune. Her success and confidence, though, do make her the target of suspicion and resentment from many of the townspeople, especially Emma Small, played by Mercedes McCambridge. Emma is bitter and very influential in the town, and she harbors a deep personal grudge against Vienna. Into the situation rides Johnny Guitar, the titular character played by Sterling Hayden. He's a former gunslinger who now carries a guitar rather than a gun, hence the name. He does have a romantic history with Vienna, but does try to remain neutral in the town, although he's brought into it after the town is looking for someone to blame due to a series of robberies and violent incidences. As those accusations add up, Vienna is falsely accused, linked to the gang of outlaws led by the charismatic Dancing Kid. Gotta love the names back then. Emma uses fear, jealousy, public outrage, those classics, to turn the town against Vienna, leading to a dramatic final showdown. The film adapts the 1953 novel Johnny Guitar by Roy Chancellor. Though it's a very loose adaptation, it changes much of it, making the focus the rivalry between Vienna and Emma. The film is officially directed by Nicholas Ray, but reports that cast and crew have suggested that was really Crawford who did most of the directing, using her power and influence over the production. Joan Crawford had a number of issues with other co-workers as well, most notably Mercedes McCambridge. They reportedly really hated each other and fought all the time, according to the crew. Apparently that paid off, because you certainly see that on screen as well. Cinematographer Harry Stranding Sr. often would combine location photography with studio close-ups. A scene might begin with a wide shot in Arizona, but then cut to a studio close-up under careful, controlled lighting. This editing style can make it seem like Crawford was never out on location, although she was, so just to clarify there. The film earned around $2.5 million in the North America market, so it did turn a profit, although its reception with fans and critics at the time was very mixed. However, it was extremely well received in Europe, especially in France, including two critics, François Truffaut and Jean-Luc Godard, who gave it rave reviews. Of course, two people who would go on to make some legendary films themselves. It has gained more respect over the years and actually has a 94 on Rotten Tomatoes as we speak. But where do Kevin and I stand? Are we with those original who saw it when it first opened? Or are we more with the more modern audiences? Back to us to discuss.
All right, thanks for the facts, Dan, on Johnny Guitar. So kind of just to get us going here, Dan, give you a little bit of a setup here. So a lot of critics love this film. They say it completely flips Western conventions. They enjoy the rivalry between Vienna and Emma. They like some of the political subtext. They praise the direction, its willingness to be melodramatic, and its influence overall. On the opposite side of that, some critics feel like the acting is too much over the top, that the dialogue doesn't sound natural. They wonder why Johnny is the name of the movie, but not the focus. Felt like the romance felt underdeveloped and that the melodrama could become unintentionally funny. Wondering what side of the spectrum you fall into and what was your reaction on the first watch of Johnny Guitar?
Yeah, so interesting. I think I could see and understand a lot of those high and low points regarding it. And watching it, like, one of my biggest first impressions was, like, if this movie came out today, like, the internet grifters would, like, have a field day, because it is a movie called Johnny Guitar. As mentioned, he's basically a side character. You have kind of the females taking center stage, of Joan Crawford kind of looking not like you would typically see a leading lady in this era, or with the Western, you think of, like, the femme fatales or things like that. Like, clearly not. She is more, she's certainly more in a masculine role than you would typically think of. And even like her rivalry with Emma Small, both on screen and off screen, they really are this movie. It is interesting that it is called Johnny Guitar when he's really like C character in this. I think there is a lot to like about it beyond just that portion of it. I do like the dynamic between Joan or Vienna and Emma Small, the character, like their rivalry. I do feel like, in a way, we have a brief of where it comes from. We get some idea, but I do think maybe a little bit more would be able to let you buy in and maybe understand why they are so vicious to one another. But they do have, I don't know what the opposite of chemistry is, but they have it, like, in a good way, where, like, because apparently in real life they did really despise each other, and that came across on screen. And I do, knowing this was written by a blacklisted writer at the time because of everything going on with the Reds, I certainly see the ideas of mob rule, what that, the impact that can have, the negativity it can have when people just kind of go along with whatever they think the big bad is and not really think it through. So I think there are a lot of interesting ideas. I do agree the romance, like, there is, when it comes to the romance, there's like no chemistry between any of these characters. Like, the love triangle that is being developed, like, they do not feel like they at all belong within a relationship with one another. And I do think that, like, by the end, it takes all these interesting ideas. It takes like this groundbreaking approach, and then kind of just becomes another shootout western, although maybe with different characters. So generally thought there was some interesting ideas here, and I found the approach pretty refreshing, especially considering this was coming out near some other films we've talked about, which had a very different take. But I do think it was one of the strongest films as a whole. There's a lot of ambition here, but I don't think that ambition was always warranted with uh, the overall end up product. And I do think reading into it, some of my issues made a lot more sense when I looked into the making of it, and like, okay, we can get into that later. Why some things felt a bit off. It all kind of connected for me. So I generally would say I'm positive. I get, where am I on the spectrum between the high end and low end? I guess to have a major comp out, I'm like right in the middle. But I'm curious. You said ChatGPT and didn't think you would like it, and it was right last time. Was it right this time?
I would say that it thinks it was right when I told it my opinions, but I don't think it was. Um, and I'll tell you why. I think there's a lot to appreciate about this film. I think there's a lot of good aspects of it. When it all comes together in like a final product and through execution and whatnot, did everything work and did everything click? I would say probably not. But I think it reminds me of like if you were looking at a director's retrospective, like if you're looking at like a famous director and their body of work, it reminds me of that film that is done early on in their career that then they come back and like later in their career make it kind of a different version of that film, but they do it better. Like to me, it's almost like something like that. Like there's a lot of good seeds and good ideas here. Was it done and executed like at a top level? I would say maybe not, but I don't know. It's almost like I know they're different directors, but to me, in a way, it's like the earlier, not as good version of Once Upon a Time in the West in a lot of ways. Like
Hmm.
Once Upon a Time in the West takes a lot of similar things that this film is doing and just does it better. I'm not saying they're
Yeah.
like apples to apples, like they're
Yeah.
different types of films and they're doing different things, but they both have um similar backstories for their main characters as far as like saloon keeper or prostitutes who become saloon keepers and different things like that. They both have like a strong female presence in it. They both kind of have like this triangle situation going on. They both have like the mysterious gunslinging outside. I know a lot of these things can be said for a lot of westerns, right?
Yeah.
But to me it's like something that you would look at any famous director and say like, "Hey, this is like the version of a movie they did before they had honed their craft and then later on they go on to do something that maybe is on a different level." But I generally enjoyed it. Like the other thing that it really screamed to me when watching this is, and you talked about the lack of chemistry, and I think that's definitely a thing, right? Like that's definitely prominently featured in this film is I guess a lack of chemistry, but not always like in a bad way. But
Hmm.
it really reminds me of a stage play, and I know we'd say that a lot, but
Yeah.
in this respect, when you go and watch something on stage, I think subconsciously you're much more aware that these are individual actors that are putting on a show that feel less connected with each other in a way. I don't know if I'm explaining that right, but like I feel like in a movie sometimes you can get lost in the movie and really feel like these are family members or lovers or things of that nature. And I think that's much harder on stage because of like just the dynamics of a stage play. And I love stage plays and I love theater and stuff like that. But I think you're always aware because they're right in front of you that these are actors, right? And I think in a movie sometimes it can get lost in like you just get wrapped up and lost in it. And like it seemed like it was always evident that these were individual actors doing a job that was a little bit like takes you out of it a little bit. Like, yes, it is very melodramatic. Yes, there's some kind of like similar to whatever one of the very first films we watched in this retrospective, where I asked you, I was like, is this how it's going to be like from here on out? Like, are they going to overact like throughout this whole retrospective, and are they going to be like larger than life and stuff like that? It has a lot of that in this, like
Yeah.
especially from, and it's crazy because Mercedes McCambridge as Emma Small, she either won or was nominated for an Academy Award in her first role ever. Like the
Yeah.
first movie she ever did, she was already on the biggest stage, but she is a lot in this movie, and it feels like she is playing for the back of the theater. Like the way that her facial reactions and expressions and her like the everything, her eyes and like the way she's speaking, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, did somebody tell her that this was a movie?" But so there is definitely a lot of that. There's a lot of larger than life, which I wasn't a huge fan of. Like I didn't really care for McCambridge's perf- performance, even though I did appreciate the dynamic between Vienna and Emma. Like I think that's obviously pivotal to the movie. It's interesting. There's a lot of things. Like every poster of this has the name of the movie bold and front and like size 1,000 font Johnny Guitar, but yet every poster and everything is a picture of Joan Crawford and it's starring Joan Crawford, and then it says like with these other people. So it's like it's a
Yeah.
weird choice as a title, I guess.
Yeah. I mean,
But
she was
yeah, go ahead.
she was the star. She was the star
Yeah,
of that
for
that
sure.
era. I mean, she was clearly the biggest star going into this. So
Yeah, absolutely. No, I totally get why, but like you are
yeah,
like thinking like, well, the name and the star usually match up better, but that's really has nothing to do with my
yeah,
liking of the movie or different things like that. But I found it where there was nuggets of stuff that I liked. I could see why some people would call it influential on some other stuff that comes later, maybe as far as like some stuff that you could see. I like the fact that it's two females that are kind of carrying the most weight, especially for this time period. I did enjoy the fact that I think there is, even though from an acting standpoint it's very dated, I think there is a timeless aspect to the psychology of this movie. Like mob mentality and groupthink and all of that is something that's always going to be present. Like it's always
yeah,
going to be prevalent. It's always going to be something that people can relate to no matter what generation they grow up in. So like I like those timeless aspects of the film, and I did enjoy bits and pieces, and I did enjoy my overall experience. So I was positive in general, but like does it stack up to some of the other films that we've seen in execution? Like absolutely not.
yeah.
So that's kind of
So,
like my initial reaction.
interesting. So I did actually like Mercedes McCambridge's performance. I obviously, like you said, she's a lot, but I felt like it was fitting, I guess, because she was surrounded by a lot, and
Yeah.
just like I mentioned, like the back and forth with her and Joan Crawford, and I mentioned like learning about the film and like the history of it and like what was going on stage. Apparently, like they truly hated each other, and there was like a lot of things she did. I guess one time Joan Crawford like got a lot of her coats and jackets and stuff like that and threw them into the street, and they had a pretty intense feud. And Joan Crawford herself was had a lot of like demands, I guess you would say,
Mhm.
making this movie. I don't know if you notice, especially I think it's very apparent in the end shootout where you have they're tracking everyone down, and you nearly when you have all these shots and like you look at everyone and they're all like on location. In the background you see like this kind of
Mhm.
rather picturesque scenery, very realistic. They're clearly at a real location. But then every time you see Joan Crawford, you mentioned like how it feels isolated, because I think that's kind of how they had to make it, because they
Yeah.
would pan to her, and clearly you look at any shot with her in the background was very different. The background was clearly like a painted background, and it had a very more like set feel because it was on a set where,
Right.
because she demanded that everything she did be on a set, so the lighting was perfect. And I do think like it's almost in a way it feels like it was edited where like as a spoof or something, in a way where they're
Yeah.
just putting in someone else, because sometimes it's like she's in a completely different movie because it looks so very different. So that final sequence where it's like panning to all these different characters and they're supposed to be in the same location, but clearly anytime you get to her, it's like very much not. I thought. And so I think that too.
It seemed like it wasn't just those two that had issues with each other either. It seemed
Oh
like
yeah, they
Joan
all.
Crawford had issues with everybody.
Yeah, I get. Yeah, Sterling Hayden mentioned like he felt like everyone was crazy on the set, which seems like it was the case. So yeah,
They said that like he would be on his way to the movie and just have to pull over and like throw up because he was so like not wanting to be a part of it or something. I thought I read, and
yeah,
then I think I also read that he said that no matter how much money was offered, he would never do a film with Crawford again. And he's like, and that's saying something because I like money. But so I can
yeah.
see like why some of these didn't feel like they had it works for Vienna and Emma, right? Because they're supposed to hate
Yeah,
each other. So that works. But then when it comes to the I guess quote unquote romantic chemistry that some of these characters are supposed to have, I think it definitely works in reverse against some of that.
definitely. Yeah, it you don't feel it at all because it
No.
wasn't really there at all. Even with like the dancing kid and Scott Brady, again, like their performances by themselves work. I do feel like Johnny Guitar. You get some sense that he's trying to escape like a violent past and like he
Yeah.
doesn't have guns, but clearly like that's not the case. I do like there's a story there,
Yeah.
and apparently this is very different than the actual source material because it does make Vienna's character much more prominent, which I don't necessarily have an issue with. It does, but it he does feel like a very undeveloped, like very character who just kind of pops in, pops out when
Yeah.
necessary. But overall, the cast is pretty stacked, though. Like I didn't
Oh yeah.
realize Ernest Borgnine shows up, and who I love, and he's one of those like great actors that comes in everything.
He's super
I
young in this too.
Yeah,
Well, he's
although
not
I
like
always
super young, but he's young compared to what I knew him.
I just recently saw him in something else. It was I forget the name of it, but he plays a similar character. It's that the other movie takes place. It's like it's a film takes place in one day. I get the name of it in a second, but he plays a similar character where he's like this kind of tough guy enforcer who kind of tends to uh, he tough, but that ends up being the one that beaten up at the end.
Right.
So it was interesting seeing him play that. In my head, like when I think of him in the movie Marty. He's like this great, like who's like one of the most endearing characters ever. So ever seeing him like role like this, but it was great seeing him show up because he's always a fun presence. And then Ward Bond, who we've seen a lot in all the different movies with John Wayne. Seeing him without John Wayne, it's like I didn't know you're allowed to make movies without John Wayne. That's kind of
See, I think I saw Ernest Borgnine like way later, like in his TV roles. He was like in
oh yeah.
Murder She Wrote and Highway to Heaven and like Little House on the Prairie and stuff like that. Like, like I did not see him I know he's in a lot in the 50s and 60s, but I had not been exposed to him yet. So I was like, oh, that's the same guy. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. I also remember like McKell's Navy. I remember him in
Yes.
the funny thing is, remember him in like I saw the TV, not the TV movie, but the Tom Arnold movie, and he's in that too. Yeah, he's one of those guys who kind of shows up in everything. But
which one was Ward Bond? Was he he was in the Searchers, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes.
Ward Bond was in the Searchers. I know that's one of the ones we watched.
So he's been
Also
in a couple.
Bringing Up Baby from our last retrospective.
Yeah, seeing a lot of Ward
And then
Bond.
John Carradine was in this as well.
Yeah, old Tom. I didn't realize that was him either. I forgot, I got to mention this with Emma Small's performance. I did like her performance, although like I don't know if you felt this, but her voice it kind of sounded like Rocky from Rocky and Bullwinkle. And I kept like wondering. I kept checking like, what, did she voice Rocky? Because she feels like her voice sounds. It has that same pitch to it. So
Maybe that's what my problem was. Like, I don't know if it was the voice as much as I think it was more the voice than the performance. Like, I just felt like she was always shouting to the back of the theater. I don't know.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think her and Joan Crawford were trying to have an act off where, like, they just like, who can, have the biggest performance, and they both won.
Do you know who I liked in this? I liked the dancing kid. Like
Yeah.
I'm not saying like his character necessarily, but I thought his performance was pretty. He was out of the whole cast like the least person that was trying to overact. Like I feel like he was just doing his thing. Like it was mainly the two women that were doing most of the overacting, but and a couple of the townspeople. But like the dancing kid just seemed like a little bit more subtle compared to all of that, and I actually enjoyed his performance. I looked him up to try to see like what else I've seen him in, and I haven't seen him in a lot, but his last film role was the sheriff in the original 1984 Gremlins movie.
Oh, wow.
So if you want to look that up, anybody, you can look that up. But apparently he's the one of the sheriffs in the Gremlins movie. That was his last role. But I
Like,
thought Scott Brady was pretty good.
movie I have yet to see, so that's
Gremlins?
intriguing. Yeah, I've never
Oh,
seen
we got to add
Gremlins,
that
so
this Christmas. It's got to be a part of
yeah.
something.
Christmas movie retrospective. Oh, and the movie I was thinking about with Ernest Borgnine was A Bad Day at Black Rock. It's like
Okay.
it's about this guy who it's kind of like a neo-western in a way. It's about um this character played by Spencer Tracy. He comes into this town. He's trying to find out this secret, and it's a very like secretive town. And then Ernest Borgnine is like one of like the criminals there. But that takes place like after World War II, from
Hmm.
present day of its era. And like more came out in 1955, actually a year after this. So
Okay.
intriguing there.
Yeah.
But
So I'm curious too, as far as the film goes, and we talked about some of the themes and the paranoia, the mob mentality, power and stuff like that. We do see some like pretty mature elements as well. Like obviously we see a this place get burned to the ground. We see a hanging, which they just don't really pull many punches in that sequence,
no,
really.
yeah,
Like
I
that
was
just happens, and there's a bunch of people around it that are okay with it. Like,
I yeah, definitely. uh, I think it did it pretty tastefully, and I was thinking, okay, well, here comes Johnny Guitar to save the day, and like, yes, but there's a cost there. So, and I
I was
do
like, are
think
we
that
gonna get
helped.
the shot again? Like somebody's gonna shoot the rope? Like, is that what's gonna happen? They're gonna recycle
I
that?
did. I did think that was. I was like, oh, he's gonna shoot the rope, but no, actually, did like the solution to that where he's on top of the bridge and cuts it. I'm like, that actually makes much more sense. So there you go.
What did you
Uh,
think of the constant use or go to of the like secret trail through the waterfall? Like, I think we saw some them go through that like that path like 6 times at some point in the movie, where they were
I-
going back and forth to like the hidden layer on the mountain for the quote unquote bad guys.
Yeah, I did. I mean, it's a cool layer. So I guess it's like, all
Yeah.
right, well, we came up with this, we're gonna use a lot of our time on our layer budget. So,
I was very confused though as
yeah,
to like the space we were living in.
yeah,
Like
that,
the distance from one place to the rest, the how it all is oriented. Like it seemed like they would be going off on this like long trail, and then they would just be right back in front of the saloon or whatever it was, and then it was
yeah.
like back to the dancing kids lair, and like I was like, are these things next door to each other? Are they right
Okay,
next door? It's just a waterfall connects them.
that I had a similar idea because I wasn't really clear if like they went through that waterfall and that's where the dancing kid hideout was on the other side of that, and it was like a quick, yeah. The geography was a little strange overall, like where everything was located. Like even like the Vienna's like place, like where it is in relationship to the actual town, because it felt like
Mhm.
it was like out on its own, doing its own thing, but I guess it was more so part of the actual town itself. So I think, yeah, that the geography is a little odd here, but
The other
not to the point.
thing,
Go ahead.
yeah, no, not to the point where it like takes you out. It was just something that was kind of like a minor
Yeah,
detail that I was like, I am very confused as to like how big this actual place is. Another thing that was a little bit confusing for me was the actual dynamic between in relationship between multiple people in that mob, or like between Emma and like one of them was a sheriff, and then one of them was just like a powerful guy, and like it seemed like it was a little foggy as far as like the hierarchy in that group. Like I get like Emma's in control and like most of them are
yeah,
listening to her, but it was very confusing as far as to like at times they had difference of opinions, but you didn't know quite how everybody ranked, and like I guess it was just more of that just general mob mentality, but I was not sure where, like, I think it was Ward Bond was like one of the main guys there, and I was like, is he just like, what's his relationship with Emma? Like, are they just townsfolk that both have a lot of power?
I think, well, you had the marshal, and then you had the sheriff, and then you had Emma, who was like the, she had she was the bank, I guess, in the sense because
Yeah.
of her husband being dead. So I took it as like the marshal was there because of like the overall, being a marshal, he's more of a on the federal end, so he
Mhm.
has technically the most authority, but in the sense of uh, you know that authority doesn't mean much if the mob around you isn't going to recognize it, and the person who's actually having the money and can control the town really has the final say. So I don't know if like that was what they're going with it per se. Like,
Yeah.
we've had a few films, even talking about again Once Upon a Time in the West, where it's like, what's more deadly, the dollar or
Yeah.
the gun. So I don't know if it's something partially regarding that again, possibly, but that's the way I
Yeah.
took it.
I get that. I also did enjoy the dynamic between the dancing kid and then what is it, old Tom and Bart, I think. Like that was very spaghetti westernish where it had like this posse of people that like how much could they trust each other? How much
Yeah.
were they just in it for themselves and kind of how that dynamic was going to fall down when it came to like loyalty and who would cross who? Like I thought that was an interesting dynamic. I'm curious what you thought of those three. And then we haven't spent a lot of time talking about Sterling Hayden. Obviously, we know that he wasn't getting along with Joan Crawford, but like, what did you think as far as him as Johnny Guitar? An interesting casting. They cast a guy that didn't know how to play guitar and didn't know how to ride a horse. But
Yeah, but he
I
was
guess it's
tall.
Hollywood.
Yeah, so you can fake it. So I did like the dynamic of the gang. I did like the fact that when it began and like they show up in the bar, or I guess casino, whatever you want to call it. Like,
Hmm.
I did actually at first think, oh, because when you see that opening scene, you don't really get to see who really robbed the stagecoach,
Right.
and I did think it was them because like they walk in and they kind of have that presence of being this like
Yeah.
ruthless gang, and finding out no, actually it wasn't. They were trying to do the right thing, and how they get pulled into doing the wrong thing because, hey, if they're gonna think we're gonna do the wrong thing anyways, might as well. So I did like that aspect in their dynamic together to how they had each other's back, but to a certain point, and like how it was a bit, you know, how they had a lot of rivalry within that group as well. So that I thought was effective, and I thought Sterling Hayden. I thought he had a beyond not having chemistry with Joan Crawford. I thought he was a good presence. I've enjoyed it, loved him in so many other performances, but I don't think this. He had an opportunity really to do much, and like I mentioned, like his character, we don't know that much about. Like the little song he does do, sure. Like I couldn't tell he didn't know how to play guitar. I also don't know how to play guitar either, so perhaps that's why. Uh, but I thought like he has certainly a presence to him. He has the cowboy look, but it's not necessarily a performance I would go to. It's like, oh, we want to see certain Hayden being that iconic actor. I didn't think that he had even the opportunity to even do that here.
It says that he was offered the role of Quint in Jaws, but turned it down. That's an
Interesting.
interesting note. The
Yeah.
other person we didn't. I guess I kept saying three, but one fourth member of that gang that spoiler alert, doesn't make it to the end is Turkey Ralston, played by Ben Cooper, who also apparently has a supposed to be a love angle with Joan Crawford, even though they're like I don't know 40 years or not 40, they're like 20 years at least in age difference. But what did you think of I kind of liked Ben Cooper in general, just as a presence on there
Yeah.
as kind of like the young guy who's kind of unable to be bottled up or like, he's kind of like the loose cannon, so to speak, or the emotional punk kid. I don't know if I really enjoyed the romance connection between him and Joan Crawford, but I did enjoy him as just an extra person who didn't fit the mold of everybody else in the film. But what did you think of Turkey Ralston's character?
Yeah, and we've seen this role a lot, right? The
Mhm.
young gun trying to prove himself, and often those characters can come off as really annoying. And I never thought that was the case here. There was much more tragedy to his character, in a bit. Like the first time he has guns, he gets them blown out of his hands. Then you kind of can understand like the put in a situation where he is trying to save himself in a way, and you could kind of criticize that character for that, but also just the fact that he succumbs to this group and then pays the ultimate price, even though was told that he didn't have to. Just like the tragedy he plays in that scene, like he told me I would be okay. Like you can see like just the utter defeat within his character. So I agree. I think he was a really like a character that often can be the weak link in a lot of other westerns. I thought
Yeah.
worked here.
I think he was a good-looking kid too, like, I'm so he had a lot going for him for this one. I was pleasantly surprised because yeah, he could easily have come across as somebody that was kind of, an eye roller in this film, especially with as
Yeah.
large as they were allowing everybody to act. I could have seen him, like, trying to, like, seize the moment and, like, make every scene about him, but I thought he did a decent job. This film was, nominated for a couple of the different AFI lists, so it got a nomination for when they were compiling the list for AFI's 10 top 10 for Westerns, and, Emma Small also got nominated for an appearance on the 100 Heroes and 100 Villains list as well. So some love out there. I think it has like a 94% on Rotten Tomatoes and like a 80 something on Metacritic. But I guess not necessarily a polarizing film, but I feel like there is people on both sides of it. Like I am glad I watched it. Like I was entertained enough that while I watched it, I'm glad I've seen it. And I can see, like I said, where some of the other films may or may not have like seen certain things and kind of grabbed towards it. I do, like I said, like it broke a lot of the conventions with the way that they treated the two main female characters. So I think there is enough to appreciate and or like a easy recommend for like somebody who's really trying to get like a full picture of all the westerns. Like I do feel like from an execution standpoint, there are some misses, and probably a lot of that is due to this filming back and forth, whether they're on location or on set for
Yeah.
Mrs. Crawford, or the lack of chemistry in real life between Sterling Hayden and Joan Crawford probably didn't help that. Where I guess it probably helped with her and Emma, but like it's one of those like I know you said like it's kind of a cop out to say it's in the middle, but like I can totally see that, and I feel like that's kind of where I'm at as well.
Yeah. I I do, and like I said, I do think it's like I said, it is ambitious. It's going for a lot of things that,
Hmm.
especially at that time, you didn't see westerns do. So I do think it plays an important part in that aspect. I also think it looks really
Yeah.
intriguing. Like the use of color, even in like Crawford's outfits, like they're very striking. It's a very different like style and look in a lot of ways. I know when it came out, it was not well received because I think because it was so different and a bit ambitious, at least in the sense of like United States audiences didn't know what to do with it. So and it even like I read a lot of like the contemporary reviews at the time, and some of them are very very harsh, especially like to Joan Crawford, like the way she looked. Like I can understand why some of these actresses like had were the way they are because they like went after her pretty strongly regarding the way she looks. Like there was critic who called it like basically like Beauty and the Beast with Joan Crawford being the Beast. I'm like,
Oh
wow, that
wow.
is, yeah, they were pretty vicious with her. So yeah, but I think that's far too far too harsh for a number of
Yeah.
reasons. But I and I so like I said, I think there's a lot to take out of it. Also, it's intriguing too because I think originally this was designed to be in 3D. Like they were thinking,
Yeah.
which I
I
don't know
saw
how
that.
that
I
would
don't understand.
how that would work.
Wow.
I mean, maybe that fire sequence could look pretty cool, but it was like the gimmick at the time. But I don't know if that's why it had some of the color choices it did because it had a lot of like flat colors, a lot of like a
Yeah.
lot of monochromatic colors. I think, or is it? I don't know my
That
colors.
that'd be
Whatever.
something to research, like what how they were doing a 3D option in 1954 or whatever year this was.
Yeah, but yeah, like I said, I'm glad we watched it, and I think it is worth a watch just to
Yeah.
see its place within history and seeing some of these performances, and just even if they are a little bit big at times, and I think it gives you a lot to look at. And like I said, I think too, especially speaking to the time, obviously with this going on at the Red Scare and with all the concerns about communism and all that stuff, certainly speaks to that. And it being written by a writer who was on the blacklist, you can certainly see a lot of the impact of like what was trying to be said, and having that context, I think, adds a little bit to it as well. I just think sometimes it just not everything worked, which is okay. But
Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally
um,
agree. So
but
that
what are we
go ahead.
going to next?
So we're going backwards a year, actually. So this was 1954. We're going to go back to 1953, which should put us, in the same time period. Same. It's going to be interesting seeing these back to back and knowing that they were filmed kind of at the same time ish.
Yeah.
The name of this one's called The Naked Spur, from 1953. And the only thing I know about this film, Dan, is the fact that I just pulled it up and I can see that two of the stars are people that we're obviously pretty well familiar with, which would be Jimmy Stewart and Janet Leigh. That is all I know about this, other than the poster has Jimmy Stewart holding a spur and has a couple guys punching each other, and it says it's packed with Technicolor thrills. So, like, sign me up. I'm ready. What do you know about the Naked Spur, Dan?
What you just said. That's basically what I know. I know the year, and I know it has Jimmy Stewart and, like you mentioned, Janet Leigh. So it was nice to see two actors from the Hitchcock retrospective coming together for a Western. So I don't know much about. Wow, don't know what it's about, which I like. I like that, like going in not knowing anything, especially for a movie that's as old as this. So intrigued to see. I know it's like I said, this is the overlooked Western section. So I'm seeing if
Makes
it
sense.
deserves to be overlooked, or maybe it'll be a surprise hit. We'll see.
I'm definitely interested, like you said, to see the two of the people we saw in the Hitchcock retrospective now completely in a different environment. In the Westerns, obviously, we already saw Jimmy Stewart and one of the Westerns we covered
Yeah.
so far, but we have not seen Janet Leigh. So I'm interested to see how that works out. And we just came off of a film that kind of had two females like front and center. So I'm interested to see like how Janet Leigh's character is portrayed in this one. Is it another strong female, or is it taken more of a traditional kind of stereotypical female role from this era? Like that'll be interesting to see for sure. So I'm excited to see this as kind of the last of our three. Is this the last of our three in the overlooked? We've edited
Yeah.
it a few times, and
Yeah.
then
We
what's
missed. We did after
where are we going after this?
So we're in the overlooked Western section. The Naked Spur was the last one, and then we did make some additional additions. Additional additions. That's bad English. But we went and we added some. We have like a more classic Western section. I couldn't think of a better name for it, but we're gonna go back and get some more of the classic Westerns we haven't included, like Red River, High Noon, Shane, Rio Bravo. So
That's gonna be
we'll get
interesting too, because it gives us a chance to like go back to that classic era now after watching a bunch of these other kind
yeah.
or like these other like subgenres. So I think it's gonna be an interesting way to do that versus watching just all of them straight in the beginning. Um, so I'm intrigued to see how this all goes. What else are we gonna be like sending out into the episodes for people to watch recently for those that are not Western fans?
Yeah, so we were thinking about like, okay, we've been doing this Western perspective and we're adding a much more, and we're like, well, what about people who don't like Westerns? They might have no interest in all this. So we thought, okay, well, let's try to do something on the completely other end of the spectrum. We're gonna pick a franchise, and we picked the franchise to kind of go through, and one I think that we've had some experience with in the past, and we're going to start that very shortly with Planet of the Apes retrospective, going through all of those movies from the first until the most recent. So I'm curious, like Kevin, what's your experience with Planet of the Apes? I know we've talked about like the more recent ones a few times, but what about the franchise as a whole?
So yeah, so it was probably I'm guessing about 15 years ago now. Man, that makes me feel old. It was before the modern ones. I don't remember when the very first of the most recent films was on, but I think it was probably somewhere
I think
around 15
2009,
years ago.
2010, around that time.
Okay, so that's if my math's correct, that's about 15 years ago. And so probably 17 years ago, if I can do math correctly, but it was somewhere around there that my wife and I actually went through. I believe we hit all of them. So we watched all of the classics, Planet of the Apes films. We watched the Mark Wahlberg film, and then we started in on the modern films. And I've seen every Planet of the Apes film at least once, and I've probably
Wow.
seen the modern films multiple times. The first one I know I've seen 3 or 4 times, and then the other ones I know I've seen at least twice. So I actually do have some experience with all of the Planet of the Apes films. The thing that I'm interested in, though, is when we did that all those years ago, we watched them in chronological order, and we finished with the more modern ones.
Mhm.
So now that I've seen those, I'm very interested to go back and watch the originals again to see like what other stuff I pick up on or connections I can make, which I know a lot of
Yeah.
people have probably written ad nauseum on all that, but like I haven't experienced myself, so I'm definitely intrigued to like go back at this point and watch them now that I've seen all of them. But what's your experience with the franchise?
I've seen the original. It's been a very long time since I've watched it though. Probably similar to you. So the Rise came out 2011, so I guess 15 years ago, which makes sense.
Makes me
Uh,
feel better, Dan.
yeah, sorry, I gave you some more time back. But I've never seen the movies after that. Like I've seen like here and there, like they'd often be on back when I had cable. They would like come on cable and I'd see scenes like pop in and out and be like, why the Planet of the Apes in modern time? So I know ideas of where the other movies went, but I've never seen them start to finish. I'm not really sure much about like where they go or what happens. I love
It
the
gets
newer
crazy, I can
films.
tell you that much.
I can imagine. I love the newer films, like the from. I remember like when Rise was coming out, and thinking, why are they doing Planet of the Apes? It's like they tried that, it failed. I think if I'm looking at my favorite franchises of like the 2010s, that might be my on top of my list. So
Yeah, like,
um,
I get that, like, seeing the 2001 version with Tim Burton and Mark Wahlberg was like, they did that, it didn't work. I
mm,
I don't know what happened in those 10 years between 2001 and 2011, or if it was just who was involved with it or what, but my goodness, has I don't think any other film has made 10 years feel like 50 more than the difference
yeah,
between the 2001 and the 2011 version. Like, I remember seeing the 2011 one and, like, going bananas for it. Like, it was definitely in
yeah,
my top 10 films of the year that year. I proceeded to like every movie since then, and I
hmm
just think there's so much there. Like, I really wish that it would have successfully gotten like mocap into the Academy Awards and things of that nature. But
yeah.
it's definitely interesting. So now that everything that has come out, and I know there could be more or something that would come on down the road, but we're at 10 of them, 10 films so far. So nice round number. So out of the 10, you've fully seen how many?
I've seen the first, and then the three. I actually have not seen the most recent one
And you
that
haven't
came out.
seen the Tim Burton one or no?
I've seen the Tim Burton one. Yeah, I saw that
Okay.
in theaters actually.
So you've seen
Uh,
5 of the 10.
yeah, so I've not seen half of them, so that's exciting. I
Yeah.
have read some of the
Like
comics
role
though.
reversal.
Yeah, I have read some of the comics though, because there's been a lot of Planet of the Apes comics, and I'll talk about that when we get into the first movie because there's actually a comic that is an adaptation of Roger Sterling's like original draft for the Planet of the Apes, which was going to be much different than the movie itself, but had to be changed because it would have been like far too expensive to do. Because it was like a more of like Planet of the Apes in more like modern time.
Mhm.
Like so, so I've always really always I have always loved the franchise. So I've always wanted to go back and watch those movies. So now it's a good opportunity to do that. And then of course, like we mentioned, if you're someone who doesn't like westerns, perhaps you'll like science fiction and
There you
like, and also I don't think we've ever talked about them or done reviews of them, even the newer
go.
ones. So it'll be fun
I
to
think
do.
we've talked about them as they've come up in like year-end awards
Yeah.
or top 10s or stuff like
Yeah.
that, but that's probably about it. The other thing that's interesting is that there's 10 films and there's 8 different directors. So
Yeah.
it's always a different flavor.
Yeah, true.
So
All
yeah,
right.
it'll
So
be
that'll be
interesting. You can either get to our Western love and continue on with us there, or you can switch over to sci-fi and or you can do both. Like, just
Yeah.
mix it up and watch both and listen to us. Like, if you can't get enough of us, which I don't know if that's possible, but and you can keep up with all that stuff. Dan, do you want to give them a heads up on how they can interact with us online?
Yeah, and hopefully I'll get back to doing more. I've been on vacation, but check out our Facebook page at the Cinema Geekcast podcast. We've been putting hopefully more stuff up on there. Going to put some stuff about our box office draft, how that's going, and other things like that. You can
How is
also
that going,
follow.
Dan?
I am getting crushed. I am doing horrible. So we'll see. Well, I
You still
the
got some
Minions
heavy hitters coming.
yeah. Well, but like
Supergirl
yeah,
did not help me.
no, but Animal Farm, I think lost somehow. Like has negative money. I don't know.
There's a couple picks we wish we could have back. That's for sure.
Yeah, and certain ones I wish I definitely picked. Like I really underestimated some of the horror films. We'll talk about it another time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so but I am not. If this was a fantasy football season, I'd be like 0-8 at this point. But yeah, you can find me on social media platforms at Comic Concierge.
Yeah, and you can find me at Optimus Solo. We also may be putting out an episode soon that gives you some more modern takes on 2026 films as we have crossed the halfway point. We might give you guys a little update on the stuff that we've seen. I know Dan's been he's been hitting the pavement hard with film watching this year. You have me destroyed. I think I accidentally let myself get wrapped up into like 4 or 5 different TV series that really started dominating my time, and I need to catch up on some movies. So, but I know you've seen a bunch, and I probably have some great recommendations. So we'll try to get that out for people to listen to soon as well. So, if you have any ideas or comments for the show, Dan just gave you the ways to search us out and drop those comments, and we definitely will listen to all comments and take all feedback and as we go forward. But and that does it for this episode. So tune in next time for another chance to listen to more of the Cinema Geeks.